Let's dive right in. A lot of people hear the word systemic tossed around in therapy circles, but it still feels kind of mysterious. How would you describe what it actually means to be systemic when you're sitting with just one person in the room?
It's funny when folks think of systemic therapy, they often picture a big family squished onto a couch. But really, being systemic is more of a lens or a mindset. Even if I'm working one-on-one, I'm always considering the bigger picture. Culture, community, and the networks of relationships that shape a person's world.
So, even in individual sessions, you're carrying all those connections into the room with you, in a way. Is that about recognizing influences like culture, race, and power dynamics too?
Absolutely, and not just noticing them, but weaving them into the conversation. For example, when I worked with Aboriginal therapists in Australia, we used art to bridge cultural divides. It was about creating space for multiple perspectives, honoring that dialogue, and letting everyone's meaning-making come into play.
That art example is so powerful. Now, I keep coming back to this idea that the relationship between therapist and client is itself part of the system, not just something happening in the background.
Exactly. The therapist isn't some neutral observer looking in from the outside. We're right there in the mix, co-creating meaning and trust with the client. And, as research shows, it's often the quality of that relationship more than any specific technique that drives real change.
That actually reminds me of something I heard recently. Therapy is less about the method and more about the connection. But what does that look like day to day, especially if you're weaving in feedback or being self-reflective as a therapist?
It means being genuinely curious, open to feedback, and willing to adapt. Maybe I'll notice that a particular approach isn't working for someone, so I switch gears or I'll invite their family into the process if that might help. It's about flexibility and seeing the client as part of a larger web, not just a solo act.
You mentioned inviting families in, and that makes me wonder, how do systemic therapists balance working with individuals, couples, or whole families? Is it ever a strict, either divided by or...
Rarely. Most of us blend approaches. For instance, I might begin with a family session to get the broader picture, then work individually with someone to dig deeper, and circle back to a group conversation later. Therapy isn't one size fits all, it's more like a dance between different ways of connecting.
I love that you call it a dance. And it sounds like therapists have a whole toolkit, CBT, art therapy, mindfulness, and more to draw from as needed. Does this integrative approach help with more complex challenges, say, with teens or trauma?
Definitely. Take a teen struggling with depression. I might use drawing or storytelling in solo sessions, then, with their okay, bring those insights into a family meeting. It's a way to honor the young person's privacy but still connect the dots between their inner world and their relationships.
Speaking of teens, I'd love to hear an example. Do you have a story that shows this systemic, integrative approach in action?
Absolutely. One young client, Belinda, was dealing with anxiety and school refusal after a tough friendship breakup. Over a few virtual sessions, we used art. She drew her experiences, and with her permission, we shared these with her parents in a family session. Her drawings sparked conversations that helped everyone understand her feelings.
That's such a creative use of art. How did it help her and her family move forward?
Well, the drawings helped reframe tough experiences like feeling threatened or left out into metaphors her family could relate to. For instance, her parents talked about building a bulletproof vest of support, and Belinda even connected her love of surfing to handling emotional waves. It brought insight and a bit of hope back into the room.
That last example really brings this work to life. It sounds like being systemic is as much about creativity and flexibility as anything else.
Absolutely. The beauty of systemic therapy today is how wide the toolbox has become. New research like what Bessel van der Kolk is doing with trauma and the body shows that things like mindfulness, movement, and even drama can be woven into therapy. It's all about meeting people where they are.
I'm struck by how that lets you tailor therapy for each unique person or family. Before we wind up, is there a way listeners can start thinking more systemically in their own work or lives?
One simple step: pause and reflect on the bigger webs each person is part of: family, community, culture, even history. And don't be afraid to try new tools or invite different voices into the process. Systemic therapy is really an invitation to be curious, collaborative, and open to difference.